now for our special Earth Day closer with our very earthy columnist, Robin Raskin, who, if anybody has been reading Techonomy in the last year, knows she's been an incredible contributor to our content every week. And she told me she just sent me a column, which I haven't had a chance to even read yet. But I love the hat. Amanda, welcome. Robin, take it away. And you can go a little long because I know we're starting a little late. So thank you.
Yeah, you know, they tell you, like, public speaking 101, never wear anything distracting. So, but it was Earth Day, and I did walk outside today. And I know you've been talking about this, but just so we remember, the first Earth Day was 51 years ago. And I actually remember. And the Cuyahoga River was on fire because of oil slicks. There were pollutants and toxins flooding into the waters, and this was the sign that we were a wealthy capitalist country. So we've come really far, but it's because of people like Amanda Parks that actually these flowers on my hat will become the flowers that we wear by next year. And so I've known Amanda since she was a PhD student at MIT Media Labs, and she always talked to me about the collision of science and fashion, and I didn't quite see it. And fast forward, she is now the Chief Innovation Officer at Pangaia and doing they're in the news every day if you don't read the fashion or the tech news, but she's doing so many amazing things with natural materials. But before we talk about what she does, I'd love her to set up the problem. For those of you that don't know, there's a lot wrong with the fashion business on so many levels. Why don't you just set up the problem for us?
Absolutely. So thank you so much for having me, Techonomy, and Robin. Yeah, Robin's been one of my biggest supporters and mentors before, when I was really quite young. And so yes, I mean, I come from more traditional tech. My background, my PhD is hybrid between material science and computer science. And before that, I was a mechanical engineer. So not trained in fashion, but I kind of entered fashion from the back end through all sorts of tech angles, biotech and wearable tech. And really, I think it was so shocking to kind of enter that way, kind of understanding how tech works and then seeing all the problems in fashion. Not that tech has solved all of its problems either, but just this idea that it was actually a huge opportunity to take some of the ways that we work in tech and apply it, and there hadn't been an innovation-driven focus. Big companies don't necessarily make their own textiles. They don't develop things. They don't have internal R&D, and there was a strange trickle down happening from different kinds of places. So, but in general, there's absolutely a huge environmental problem with fashion. There has been for a long time, and we've been kind of waking up to it for the last sort of 10 to 15 years. Obviously problems with production that also have, human rights and environmental problems. They're intersectional, as we now know. But on top of that, I think very specifically with science, because it hasn't been innovation driven. I mean, probably the last big breakthrough that people talk about is in the 1930s with polyester. So we're well overdue for some real concentrated scientific efforts there, and that's what we're taking on. And for example, about 60% of textiles within fashion have some sort of synthetic component, and that's direct virgin fossil fuels. And and we talk so much about energy for gas for our cars, how solar, wind, all these things, and we're kind of ignoring this big kind of what I think is an elephant in the room, that half of our clothes are made of plastic, or more than half, right? So that's why I just see it's a massive market, and it's been, I think, because of this mismatch of the kind of people that are interested in fashion and the kind of people that are interested in science and tech, it just hasn't been properly addressed. So I'm this kind of new crossover model. I call myself a fashion scientist. So.
And you have really deconstructed fashion, looking at the creation of materials that are way beyond polyester and spandex and even Gore-Tex. And with all our tech know-how, we've been so far behind in this. So why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the materials that you're working with, because it will blow everybody's mind.
Yeah, so, and I'll talk a little bit about our brand. And to be clear, there's amazing fiber scientists and material science technologists working out there. For some reason, those innovations are not ending up in our everyday textiles. It's just a broken system of how the normal trickle down of innovation happens. Like we, even in labs at MIT, the textile engineers didn't know anything about fashion brands. So, that's a kind of mismatch that we're talking about. So I'm just going to share, because it's visual, we're a fashion company. I'm going to share a short video and some slides because I think they're fun. I'll talk over it a little bit, but bear with me for 1 second. I think it would be just, no one wants to stare at us all day. Are you seeing anything?
We got it. Just
Okay, perfect. I'll
load
go
and you're
full
good.
screen now. Okay, so I'm just gonna run this quick movie here. This is about our brand, Pangaya. Great. So we at Pangaya, our name means all-inclusive Mother Earth, and we basically, as of now, we make sort of everyday essentials. But we call ourselves a material science company that's designing a better future. So we're very much innovation driven, and I don't know of any other fashion company that's ever been formulated from this way, from the ground up. And we're driven by our research platform, our scientific platform, which I run. And we do everything from source the best things that are out there, the best materials, because we can't, we're not going to wait 7 years for research cycles to change everything. We do startups with, we do partnerships with startups to help them get to commercialization. We help production issues, and I'll tell you a story about one of those later, and really kind of build the entire pipeline out, because it's been one of the biggest bottlenecks. Is you have a startup that's doing something great in this space, and then they don't know how to reach the fashion companies in the right way. It's a communication problem, it's a production problem, there's lots of things there. And then we do raw research, what I call, so long-term, we do it internally and partnering with universities and things that we have planned for 5-7 years out, working like the way that Google and Apple run their kind of labs, experimenting and figuring out where the industry is really going. So we're trying to really create the industry that we want it to see it be. So these are some of our products, a couple examples of fibers and the things that we're developing. We have a whole new family of textiles called Sea Fiber, which is made basically from seaweed, and we're doing all sorts of work on making this a better development. I think it's getting a lot softer and a lot better, and we're upping the actual alginate content. But I think it's important to point out that cotton has been around for hundreds of years, and we have absolutely perfected, how to make incredible fibers from it. And there's so many other plants out there that we can start doing this with, but we need to put in the time. So seaweed is one of those that is an unbelievable resource on all different kinds of levels: cellulose, protein, lipids. I can talk endlessly about algae, but this is a whole family of textiles that we have launched some products in this space. We're also working on other agricultural waste ones, where one of our principles is to take, our material philosophy is called high-tech naturalism, where we try to look for places where there's an abundance in nature, like agricultural waste, and utilize it in a way that actually augments its functionality through scientific means. And we have some new textiles coming out that will blend together 10 kind of alternative plants that will create a whole family of products that are alternatives to cotton. So, and there's nothing, just to be clear, there's nothing wrong with cotton in itself. It's just that we've over-industrialized it, and it uses, it's one of the most intensive, fertilizer intensive crops on the earth. It's really, really terrible, conventional cotton. Flower Down, this is the first patented product that we released. And this is a alternative to goose down, but that is vegan, but has no synthetics. So either you have an animal product or a fossil fuel product, and this is neither. This is fully plant-based. We take a particular part of a waste part a wildflower and blend that with proprietary cellulosic aerogel and biopolymer. So the whole thing is still compostable. But it has the fluffy characteristics and the kind of proprietary chemistry is what allows it to have its increased thermal capabilities. So we've released a whole series of jackets around this. And we also, I should mention, part of our business is we have our direct-to-consumer brand, but we also have a B2B channel, which is also something that, you know, fashion companies usually don't do. There's usually a lot of locking down and exclusivity, and we're the opposite. We are like, you know, once we release something on our own, we're like, spread it, share it, license it, you know, sell it, whatever. Like it's a win-win, right, on every level. And it also helps us change the industry, right? We need to spread these things. We do not want to keep them only for ourselves. We're also looking at treatments and dyes and everything. That there's so many hidden things in fashion, that the things that happen to you might have a fully organic cotton textile, and then someone can put a treatment on it before it gets dyed that ruins its compostability. You know, there's all these secret things that are happening. So this treatment is as a natural antibacterial. It's made entirely from peppermint oil that's infused, and this makes it so there's double whammy on sustainability. It keeps your shirts fresher longer, so you don't have to wash them. So it's the first few times it's hard to trust it, and even me, like last summer, I was trying out things, and you know, after a whole day of wearing it and being sweaty, the next day your t-shirt doesn't really smell, and it's kind of, you know, it's unnerving, but you can wear it a bunch of times. So, and then there's a whole family of new innovation in leather. These are our first product release made with grape leather. Let's see my shoes here. This is how our branding works. We tell you what's in it, right on it. And we have there's so many exciting things going on in leather, looking at mycelium, another one of my favorite plants. And there's so much waste products that can be turned into leather. We really don't need to be killing animals, as well as growing stem cell leather research, which is going on. It's a little bit longer term, taking longer, but I think there's so many different plants that be used for different kinds of properties. And then the last category is the biosynthetic. So how do we get that replacement for, you know, no one's giving up their athleisure, their spandex, their lycra. We love it. We don't want to have to be compromised. And so we have a partnership with a company called Kintra that's both an investment and a commercial agreement and co-development of research, where we're making a particular agricultural strain of a new breakthrough biosynthetic that is both bio-based as a feedstock and biodegradable. So that'll be out hopefully Q4, maybe Q1 next year, but we're really pushing that research to get, you know, something that is like what we think of as really the next breakthrough in the space. So that's all I want to share now. I hope that was not too much. I'll stop sharing.
No, we're blowing our brains. But the interesting thing is, besides the technology, this has become somewhat of a fashion statement. You have a lot of famous people proudly wearing this clothing. And just this week you talked, it was all over the news that literally Pangaea is taking pollution and turning it into ink, and that people can display what their shirt is made of on the shirt. Tell us what you did this week. It's kind of incredible.
Yeah. So let me skip ahead a couple of slides here. And I'll show you also. But yeah, so we released a new collection with a company called AirInk, which there's a great story there. It's a friend of mine from MIT who started the company, 7 years back. So these things, when people think, oh, it's overnight, how'd you make this happen so fast? No, 7 years since we started hacking on this, and taking literally pollution soot from industrial machinery. It's a perfect carbon black. And what's interesting is, like, usually black inks are made from, so the ones that are synthetically made are actually very toxic. And so this is a sort of double whammy in sustainability. So because you're sinking the carbon and you're not using anything synthetic, you're literally replacing it with something that's natural. So quick, I'm going to go back to the screen share, sorry. And I'll show you what we did this week with a whole campaign with Naomi Campbell, and released a whole collection printed with this ink. So can you guys see again?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
And again, it's so awesome that this has become a status symbol.
Yeah, I mean, and then, that's one of the things we wanted to do with our branding is just the idea of transparency in fashion has become such an issue. And so we're like, let's use it, let's celebrate it. And it has taken off. Now it's like, yeah, so this is ink that we're printing, and then don't breathe in pollution, wear it.
So the
And
ink shows up right on your shirt telling people.
yeah, so I'm actually wearing it right
yeah,
now. Here's one of the garments. Here's another one. Just pulled it out of the bag. It's compostable packaging. You know, this everything is how it comes. Yeah, and I think I love this spread because this sort of encapsulates my life, like a day in the life, like what, 1 hour. This is the actual CO2, interceptor device from Gravity Labs. And then of course, and then here's a photo shoot with Naomi Campbell. Right?
Well, speaking of that, can you back up one? So you also, because so much of this is about education and people understanding what they're wearing, and you did this amazing pop-up shop.
Yes.
Again, just like this week, I've never seen a company quite iterate so quickly.
To move backwards, Robin.
I know. I really threw you, testing you.
Had a plan, and then, yeah. So okay. So yeah. So one of the other things, and along with wearing the science, the description on the garment, is we have a lot of focus in our communication and in our marketing about the real science. And we spend a lot of time trying to work through like exactly what the science is. I mean, first of all, the due diligence, but then really constructing materials that are absolutely not greenwash and are accessible. One of my jobs in my past life before MIT, I worked in Science Museum exhibit design at the Exploratorium in San Francisco and at Science Museum in London. And I had this sort of passion about science communication and how it should be much more accessible to people. Like people sort of get trained to be scared of it in school. And it's just crazy. We have to just shift that idea. And especially with women and girls, huge passion for getting them more into STEM. So anything that can be about fashion, which naturally attracts women, getting the science crossed over there. Robin and I have talked about this a lot. It's important to me. So when we went, this is our first ever retail space. So first of all, on our website, we have a scientific glossary section, a whole science section where we've meticulously gone through and defined things like biofabrication and what's the different parts of carbon particulates and this kind of stuff. So we're not scared of talking about the real science, and we are really trying to make it accessible. We work on this all the time. And then this is our first ever retail space. It's just in Selfridges in London. It just opened last week when London came out of lockdown. We've been waiting and waiting. And we took over the corner shop in the windows with an installation that involved, we absolutely played up the aesthetic of a science lab. And all of my friends in the science world were laughing. They're like, yeah, no one's ever worked in a lab that clean, like, especially not you. It's just, but it was this sort of glorification of the aesthetic and making it beautiful, because I really do see it as beautiful. There's our windows, and something that we can celebrate and make accessible, and showing people how the flower down compost, like it's not an actual composter, but it's a sort of artistic representation of what's going on, and explaining it in a way that people think is fun and engaging. And so that is a little bit about what we're doing. And so we're only going to make retail because of the carbon footprint of doing retail. We're very conscious. We have a whole impact department in our company. We're very conscious of only doing retail when there's something special about it, when it's experiential. And we have another new retail surprise coming next week in Miami in an artistic concept space. So more news next week, Robin. But yeah, so this was all over the press last week, and this week was the airing thing. So this is sort of a bigger part of our brand ethos.
Yeah, and I think so. You've talked about the materials themselves. You've talked about the store being an educational experience, the clothing being a billboard for sustainability. Just one last thoughts on the whole factory system. I mean, we've talked about. I
just wanted to show you the end of the campaign because it's so beautiful.
Oh yeah,
it was shot in Lagos with Naomi Campbell and JK, who's Beyonce's stylist. Like, we went all in on the fashion part. I'm so super excited. So, anyways, sorry.
No, it's so great that they're supporters. So yeah, the farm factory. Yeah. Your vision of how this works.
Right. So I think one of the things that it can be confusing to people outside of, well, kind of not from tech, fashion looking in on tech and vice versa, is that the factory system, the traditional fashion manufacturing hasn't had a lot of innovation it put into it. And it's partly because the margins are so low that, I mean, even to invest in new equipment for, factories, et cetera, The technologies are out there. They're still so expensive that we just haven't made this transition. And that's something that we have to address. And brands need to be kind of co-investing with the producers. And we're trying to do that. We actually have a stake in our facilities in Portugal, and they're half research and half production. And it's important to just really have transparency and investment up and down that. So you can't just, leave a factory producer alone to try to buy the fanciest technology equipment. But on top of that, so many of the technologies that we're developing do have an entirely new infrastructure. When you think about biotech, right, and I like this idea of biofabrication, which, for example, something I'm really excited about, bacterial dyes, how, where we can have anything that we can have, basically bacteria to transfer DNA into a microorganism, and that can grow whatever particular characteristic. So, it can happen. We're working on it a lot with color. So you take the DNA part of a plant, so that, of a rose that makes it red, you splice that into a particular bacteria, and then you grow that in a bioreactor. And then the dye itself, it literally grows the dye, and it's alive. And that actually put the textile in it, and the bacteria gloms on, and it's the dyeing technique. It's beautiful. But there's a whole infrastructure around creating these large scale bioreactors for color, dyeing, et cetera, and putting them into the direct fashion chain. Often these places, these factories are in less accessible places, not as highly technologically developed. And so there's a lot of stuff there that has to kind of happen in terms of infrastructure change. So when something is really, there's an amazing prototype of something in a lab or even at a prototype scale, there's often a lot of time that, in between, and people think, oh, it wasn't real. No, it's just that there's a whole another level. It's not like the software's done, let's throw it out there. You have to kind of restart a lot of factory systems or redesign. We had to do, for flower down, we were adapting machines from the traditional down industry, but it still took us a couple of years to perfect it to a place where we, okay, this is ready for a commercial product.
So total retooling of
and it's not total. I mean, I think we're excited about, and we gauge in, investments and opportunities sometimes around, are there elements that can be drop in? And that's what's really beautiful about the biosynthetic that we're working on, is the resin actually can be a drop into the whole synthetic polyester supply chain with a few small tweaks about temperature and blah, blah, blah. But as soon as we get it right, and that's a goal, but some of them you just can't, when you get into like actual biotech, that's not an option. So we just have to address them as they go and be respectful of what needs to happen and understand that it's going to take more time and money. But those innovations are worth it, those breakthrough biotech pieces.
So I know that we're coming up on our time, and I know that there's one question on everybody's mind. Sure. It's like, can I afford this?
Yeah.
Is there a price you pay for sustainability?
No, okay. And that's really a fair question. And, I think of it like in the way that if we could treat it in the same way that we treat tech innovation, right? So when a new iPhone comes out, it is more expensive, right, than the older models. And same thing with, say, for example, pharmaceuticals, right? To make the first pill costs, $10 million or whatever, I don't know, probably much more, $20 million. The second pill costs 2 cents, but you're paying backwards the sort of amortized cost of a development. And it should be the same thing with these materials. And so it's not quite that extreme. So we're at a little bit of a higher price point. Like our sweatshirts are like around $120. And when we release something new, just the kind of cost and time of getting it to market, there's a little bit of a price increase. But here's what's so interesting about fashion. First of all, fast fashion should not exist. Like $5 t-shirts, someone else is paying for that with their lives, or the earth is paying, right? If we really had a full analysis, it doesn't exist. It's just like a race to the bottom, right? So cut out that part of the sector. We are not trying to get to those price points. We're trying to get rid of them. And luckily it is starting to happen. And then the luxury industry has crazy markups that are not justified by anything scientific or innovative. They might be justified by, I found the most rare alligator, but mostly it's about trend. I mean, craftsmanship for sure, artisanship. But I would argue that, science and luxury are actually go kind of hand in hand. I recently got Vogue to actually write "Science is the New Luxury," and I felt like it was like championship moment of my career. And but this idea that luxury is expensive and hard to make, and it's like handmade, all that kind of stuff, handcrafted, and same thing with science, right? And so the same way that the luxury industry works, there's some sort of trend that's put out in luxury, and then it trickles down into the other parts of the market in cheaper ways. And as we scale up, what's beautiful about a lot of these breakthrough technologies, like say mycelium leather, once we actually get it scaled, it's going to be so much cheaper. It's just mushrooms. Like, it's highly controlled environment, clean room, this and that, and the formulation has been taking 15 years, really. But at the end of the day, it's like spores and sawdust. Like, and so all the stuff we're doing with waste, that's another thing that I'm really excited about, is how what we call side streaming. It's like high-tech waste, where we're looking at like different parts of the when you're separating, say, plants into two separate pieces, instead of just throwing away one part of the agriculture that gets burned or something, that's collected before it gets dirtier and is analyzed for nutrients and all stuff. So it's just like free stuff if we just kind of had a system. So this is going to get way cheaper than for example, our existing leather systems, or how much it takes to,
no, it's really important.
The cotton pollutants and the fertilizers and all that stuff. So
it's unlike an iPhone, you won't need a new one. You won't need a new one every year.
Yeah. So we have so some people think our clothing is a little bit expensive because it's not the price of an H&M, but literally the luxury fashion industry is like, why is your clothing so cheap? You're making us look bad. So yeah, so they're like, you should definitely charge $400 for your t-shirts. And we're like, we don't want to. We want it to be something that people buy because it lasts. And what's been interesting is during lockdown, we recognize we got lucky that we make sustainable sweatsuits, and we're on like every list of, best work from home gear, right? But when people got the product, we go, well into developing, we really care about what I call the science of feel. Like, everyone's so hung up on fit. I think that half the time I return things is because I just get them and go, bleh. And so really getting the textiles to be incredibly soft and workable. And it's the kind of thing that you just don't want to take off. You're not sure why, but you don't take it. And so people just come back and buy more and more to, and then keep it and wear it all the time. So that's kind of where we're at, like something quality, like the way that you going for the kind of Patagonia quality, like never throw this away.
Right. So first of all, Amanda could talk forever, as you see.
I'm sorry.
The word flowers,
all I've done is
plants, and I know that our time is short, and we will be in the VIP room with some of you. But you should note one more thing about her company. It is an all-woman company with other extraordinary women who have really firm ideas, whether it's the CFO or the marketing person, and the pieces are all fitting together. So I think it's this overall vision. Amanda's running the innovation, but it's a terrific idea of just taking the process and making every piece of it work.
I just want to be clear that we didn't actually try to start a woman-founded company. I came together with my sort of senior level people, and we call ourselves a collective. We're no founder, founding team, whatever, but we don't identify in any, hierarchical roles. That's one thing that's very different. But we came together very naturally. There's one man at one of our SVPs of business, but our CFO is amazing woman who's been in all kinds of traditional finance. Same thing with marketing and media and every department. We came together naturally about just being fed up with what was going on in traditional fashion. And so I think that there's a lot to be said for when, we weren't trying to make it all women, and it's just been a natural evolution.
Very cool that you did, and it's very cool that Robin made sure we knew that, because I think it's important. And by the way, for anybody who doesn't know, Robin wrote an article about Amanda and Pangaya in Techonomy just a few weeks ago, and Robin is a great connector and introducer of new ideas. So this was a fascinating session, I got to say. So thank you so much.
And a great way to end. Yes.
It's always fun to hang out with Robin.
And you're making it happier for me and for many here today, I think, Amanda. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, so I guess, are we staying on or?
Oh, just you got a different link for the other.
Okay, I'll look it up, yeah.
I'll meet you there and we'll talk more. And there were some questions.
All right, thanks everybody. Thanks for listening. We didn't get to your questions, but thank you for the compliments and stuff. So please check out our website.
I'll get the questions answered. Okay.
I don't know where she went.
Yeah, thanks,
Okay,
Robin.
thanks, Robin.